Fit In Online, and I'm your host, Jimmy Langan. Today I've arranged a special sit-down conversation with a doctor who is an internal medicine specialist. And what he does for his clients is he focuses on exercise, proper nutrition, and clean eating habits versus prescribing medication and or recommending surgery. So I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. Let's go meet him. Okay, Dr. Dimayuga, so
yes, Jimmy.
I brought the Fit In Daytona subscribers here to meet with you because I really feel your knowledge is very valuable to the health and fitness community.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I like your approach to fitness. So I want to explain a little bit of it to everybody. But first, I think we should introduce you and tell everybody who you are. Okay.
Well, as you know, I'm Mike Dimayuga, Doctor of Medicine with specialty training in internal medicine. One of the things that, I always thought a little less of it until people heard it and then they said, my God, I never knew that background to you. I used to be chief resident at one of the training programs for Yale University School of Medicine when I went through my training.
Right.
I was nominated to become chief resident at the end of my training, which means from being a trainee, I became part of the faculty. So yes, I had to teach and educate, and come to find out, it's actually one of my passions is to help people understand things that they may have figured was too complex or just beyond their ability to comprehend. I love breaking it down and then helping them understand it. And yes, as a doctor, as a coach, and then lately with helping people with their weight, it has been a big boon to me. So that's my background.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yale. That's pretty impressive. I think you're pretty humble about that. I think that's great. One thing that I want to show you is I found one of your advertisements, and I wanted to show everybody here what it says.
Don't diet.
And I want to talk about it. What does
Absolutely.
this mean? What a doctor telling me not to diet? What does that mean?
There are several layers of complexity to that statement, and the whole intent was to grab your attention. Don't diet. What? Every other program out there that talks about helping you lose weight emphasizes dieting. Okay? Yes. For me, a diet signifies that you start something and then you stop something. I'd rather you start a lifestyle change.
Right.
Okay? So that you're not going in and out of your diet. I'm not eating this week, but I'm going to eat that next week. Hello. If it was bad before, it's still going to be bad after. Mm-hmm. Okay? Secondly, and this is now the scientist in me, study after study after study has shown clearly the more times an individual diets through their lifetime, serial dieters, the more times they do that, the more weight they gain. And for the longest time, we didn't fully understand why that was. People would diet, lose some weight, and then the rebound weight gain would come on quicker, and they'd surpass the original weight that they started from. Now we have a better grasp, a better understanding of why that is. If all you do to try to lose weight is diet, yes, you lose fat, which is what you want, but you also unfortunately lose muscle.
Sure.
So the next time you stop the diet and go back to eating regular food, you actually gain fat faster because you don't have the muscle to burn the calories off of you. So the more times you do that, you end up with less muscle each cycle, more fat each cycle, which means that you're doomed to fail. So let's just not start on the road to failure. Let's get you on the right track using the most current science. Don't diet.
Yes. So what you're saying basically is not to go from diet to diet to diet is a lifestyle change. Begin the process of learning proper nutrition, and that will be so much better for you in the long run than going from whatever the popular diet is at the time, these fad diets that come in and come out.
Absolutely. And the thing about fad diets is, unfortunately, anyone can diet for about 2 to 3 weeks and they will have some weight loss. Some people will lose weight faster, some people will lose weight slower. But especially in those first couple of weeks, people assume that that's proof that it works ridiculously well.
Yes.
And then, unfortunately, the rebound weight gain comes back on, and the next thing you know, it's worse. So yes, absolutely. Rather than start a diet, let's teach you what constitutes healthy eating. Let's teach you why eating what you're eating currently got you into trouble in the first place. Because my belief always is, an informed individual will make better choices. They may not make the perfect choice from the get-go, but that's okay. But my goal is to bring them from bad to good, good to better, better to best.
Sure. Now, another way that you practice and show people the power of weight loss and what it's like to be overweight is you have a model of 5 pounds of fat.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things, when people first see it, they're typically grossed out.
Absolutely. When I first saw it, I couldn't believe it. Okay. So Dr. Dimayuga brings out this fat log, and in fact, he calls it a medically certified replica of 5 pounds of fat. And in fact, you could tell that he really does not want to call it a fat log. Although that's probably the common name among patients who see it. But maybe from a doctor's point of view, you might not want to say that. And he does correct himself when he says it, which is kind of funny to us, because we refer to it as the fat log. But anyways, so he brings this fat log out, and it is mind-blowing. Who knew that this is what 5 pounds of fat looks like?
So this is a medically certified correct copy of 5 pounds of fat. The volume, the consistency, the color, and those red dots are actually the blood vessels in the model. We use this to get people to pay attention, and yes, it is quite the attention grabber. More importantly, I always tell folks, and I did as soon as I had the opportunity today, the next time somebody says that they need to lose 5 pounds, or you think to yourself, I only need to lose 5 pounds, this is what you're talking about. It's no small thing.
Now, you went through a period of time where you had an injury, and you had gained 15 pounds of fat. So by that model, it would actually be three of those.
Absolutely.
And we actually have a photo of the 3 models together. So I think you can see that.
Absolutely.
And that is one thing that helps you with what you do and what you teach people, is that you've been there before. You're not perfect. You've had a moment where you needed to lose a little bit of weight.
It was the most eye-opening and humbling experience, actually. I've always been very, very physically active. I spent a good part of my younger years playing high-level soccer. At one time, I was actually paid to play soccer.
Sure.
I went on to get coaching at fairly high levels, coaching certificates and stuff. And I've always been very physically active. But a couple of sports injuries within the span of 1 year basically took away my ability to exercise to the level that I had before.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, because I wasn't burning as much, I started to gain weight. Now, I've always eaten clean and healthy, so I started cutting back on how much I ate, and still the weight came on. And the next thing you know, nothing that I knew as a doctor or as a former athlete was helping to take the weight off. And you know, when you do everything that you know to do and it doesn't work, you do one of two things. You say, I'm resigned to this, it's never going to come off. Or you go, let me go find something better. And that's when I started looking at the fat logs, and we call them fat logs. They're medically certified correct replicas.
So let me gather what you just said. What you're saying basically is that it's not just the diet. You cannot just eat clean. Fitness is part of it. You have to exercise.
You have to exercise. The human body was never designed to sit still for extended periods of time. If you look at the broad range of disabilities that humans undergo, the most active people tend to have the least health problems. That's not a coincidence.
Right.
We were not meant to sit around and do nothing. We were meant to go out and do stuff. So, yes, we should eat clean, absolutely. We should have good diet habits. We should be informed to know what constitutes good versus bad. But we also have to have a fitness component in there. Now, not everyone's going to be competing at an Olympic level or a world-class level. And, you know, as we age, we may have to ramp down a little bit our expectations. But we need to continue to be active.
One thing that I want to bring up to you is that you mentioned in a YouTube video that you made that toxins are around us at all. In fact, so much that we cannot completely avoid toxins. It's part of our daily life that we're going to have toxins around us and we're going to consume toxins. So you highlight a point that is very valuable for a process of detoxifying yourself.
Absolutely. And that was part of my discovery process when I had the weight problem and I couldn't get it off. I learned that, you know, we kind of sort of take it for granted that we live in a fairly toxic world. We inhale pollutants in the air. We buy and eat produce, fruits and vegetables, and they've been sprayed with pesticides and insecticides. And unless we consistently, every single time, wash them off with soap and water, we're not really getting rid of those residues. There are heavy metals in the water, there's all kinds of pharmaceutical agents in the water, any number of different things. The very interesting thing I learned was just about every single one of those toxins is fat soluble, which explained part of the reason why I could not get rid of the fat. My body needed to hold fat in order to keep the toxins under control. One of the things that I learned was until I started a detox program, unless I took out those toxins, the fat was just not coming off of me.
Explain it.
What happens is we are exposed to low levels of toxins every single day. Mm-hmm. The reason we don't die is because the exposure is at a low level, but it's a cumulative exposure. Those levels will ultimately build. Mm-hmm. What our body does, because job number one is to keep us alive, it traps the toxins, pulls it out of circulation, and traps it into fat tissue. Well, at some point, you're going to saturate the binding capacity of fat. So now the body needs to build new fat to trap the ongoing exposure to toxins. And more fat, and more fat, and more fat. And the interesting thing is that fat sits there with the sole purpose of keeping the toxins out of circulation. So unless you do something about the toxin load, the fat's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So yes, we need to have good healthy eating habits. Yes, we need to have good activity profiles, exercise profiles. But we also, especially, think about this, a newborn child does not have too many toxins just yet. We have measured in cord blood. A lot of the toxins that we're talking about is now measured in newborn cord blood. But their overall exposure is a little bit on the low side. You fast forward 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years in my case, and the lifetime of toxin exposure is now being trapped in fat cells. And unless I get rid of those toxins, the fat's not coming off of me.
Interesting. So in your program, right now from what I'm gathering from you, you emphasize fitness, you emphasize proper nutrition and clean eating, and you emphasize detoxifying the toxins out of your body that are going to be there. We're going to be exposed to them. So with those three things in mind, you take that approach first before you ultimately resort to medicine or surgeries. So with that type of approach to medicine from a doctor, do you consider yourself an innovator or are you a dinosaur?
Both, interestingly enough.
Okay.
It took me a while to define in a fairly straightforward fashion where I am and what I am. I am a medical minimalist. I'm an internist by training, which means my forte is to talk to the patient, figure out what's wrong with them, come up with a diagnosis, and then typically, classically, prescribe drugs. But I don't prescribe drugs. As you've heard, and you've heard other people talk about this repeatedly, the first thing I try to do when I have a new patient, actually, is to take them off as many medications as possible. And even with my own family, my own mother, I see the same thing over and over again. There's just too much of it. So I try to take the individual off as many drugs as possible. I try to find the root cause of what caused the problems in the first place. And interestingly enough, it's frequently, if not all the time, lifestyle. Could be something bad with their diet. Or in the older individual, a lot of the toxins. So I'm a medical minimalist. I remove as much of mainstream medicine as possible and try to move the individual back to where they really ought to have been from the get-go.
Thank you for tuning in to the Fit In Online Network. We'll get you back to your video after this quick break. Hello everyone. We would just like to take the time to thank you for subscribing. If you haven't already, you can subscribe at fitinonline.com. We really appreciate your support and we have plenty more videos coming for you. Thank you. Now back to your video. Okay, Dr. Mike, I want you to share a story with Fit In Online that you shared with me because it stuck with me. Now, you grew up in the Philippines, right?
Yes, I did.
And you told me that one of your jobs growing up was to prepare dinner sometimes. And sometimes that was chicken. So share your experience with chicken.
Chicken. Well, you know, back in those days, and we're going back quite a few years, you went to the market to buy your produce just about every single day, and that included live chickens. So that phase of my life ends. I come over to the United States, and at the beginning, you don't really buy live chickens in the United States, not normally. But I go to the grocery and I buy roasters, whole chicken, because I want to cut it up and render it the way I want to.
Sure.
And I was amazed the first time that I did that, how much fat there is in the drumstick and thigh. So there's this big globule of fat that I had never really seen before.
It wasn't on the chickens that you prepared in the Philippines?
No, because chickens in the Philippines at that time were free-range chickens.
Okay.
Okay, and of course, chickens in the United States, for the longest time now, are factory-raised.
Meaning in a cage, right?
In a cage and fed all kinds of foods with all kinds of additives.
Sure.
So the amount of fat that I found and I was mercilessly cutting off the fat and throwing it away. It's like, and if I was cooking dinner for 6 people or so, I had a good big handful of fat that I ended up cutting off of the chicken that I was preparing, because to me it was completely foreign. I had not seen it before in that quantity, and I said, this can't be healthy. Now, I did not fully understand why at that time, but it was a big distinction. Now I understand why. Free-range chickens tend not to have that, but factory-raised chickens kept in coops or cages and fed all kinds of things, and antibiotics and food additives and God knows what else is out there. Again, these are toxins. And now the chicken has to create fat to hold the toxin. And like I said, when I first started doing this, I just like, where is this stuff coming from? Yeah. And it took me a good, 10 years or so to finally get the answer. But it's one of those things. Nobody has any second thoughts about going to the grocery and buying these kinds of chicken, and you may not have ever seen chicken cutlets or whatever that are absent that fat. To you, it may in fact be normal.
Right.
But it's not.
That's good to know. Now, next I want to talk about your YouTube video that you titled, and I imagine you make YouTube videos for your webinars that you host, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So this YouTube video that I'm going to reference was titled, Weight Loss Programs Do Not Work, I believe was something of the title.
Why most weight loss programs fail.
Why is that?
Combination of different things. And the short version of it has to do with, if the programs only emphasize dieting, and we had talked about that earlier, well, you're doomed to failure. You may have initial temporary success, but you're going to have the rebound weight gain. Because if that's all they emphasize is dieting, that's not going to work. Secondly, from my standpoint as a physician, if the program does not pay attention to your nutritional state from the beginning, and this is one of the things that most people have a hard time wrapping their mind around. When you hear the word malnourished, most Americans think of the skinny image, okay? Right. But from a medical standpoint, the obese individual is just as malnourished. In other words, their nutrition needs attending to. And if the program does not pay attention to nutrition before anything else, you're not going to have long-term success. So dieting alone will not work. Not paying attention to nutrition is not going to work. If there's not an emphasis on exercise, it's not going to work. Because we were not designed to sit around and do nothing. And then ultimately, toxin exposure. If nothing is done to remove that, it's not going to work. Now, the interesting thing to me, because I'm a perfect example of how all of these things came together in one body. If I didn't pay attention to every single component simultaneously, I could have a little bit of success, but I was never going to have the success that I wanted, and much less long-term success. So every little component needs to be paid attention to.
Dr. Dimayuga, you are a father.
Yes, I am.
A 7-year-old daughter.
7 years old.
Okay. One thing that I have noticed in people trying to achieve fitness who are parents is that it is hard to get into that lifestyle when you are raising a child who all of the food companies are marketing with sugary drinks, sugar snacks. The box has their favorite cartoon character on it. they're getting some of that at schools, even in some situations. Of course, when they go over to their friend's house, that type of stuff. So, how have you approached that, and how are you finding success with teaching nutrition at a young age?
And this is a very, very interesting, very, very good question. When my daughter arrived, we made a conscious decision that we were not going to have two different meals in the household at mealtime. In other words, what most people do is they prepare foods that they know the child will eat because it's mostly carbs, sugary, sweet, and then they have regular adult food. We made the decision that we were not going to go that route. We prepared food, regular adult food. In cases where the dish might be a little spicy, we toned down the spices some, but we introduced her to real food right from the beginning. She was not eating mac and cheese, for example, and she really had no idea what a pizza was for the longest time. Chicken nuggets did not really happen until she was old enough to watch commercials on TV and understand. And it's not that she likes the chicken nuggets. In her mind, the chicken nugget is a means to get the toy from the store. Right. So that's what we started off with. We exposed her to real food from the beginning. So it's a very interesting situation. My daughter eats a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables that her peers, her classmates, her friends won't touch because they don't think that they're tasty. Right. We don't have separate foods for the child and for the adults. Everyone eats the same foods. She's also learned that the concept of fast food is not necessarily a healthy concept. She understands that these are not the best for her.
I like how you just mentioned that the fast food element is almost unavoidable. There is a situation where at some point you are going to need a fast food meal or be exposed to it, or through the process of not enough selection, you have to have it. And if you are living the healthy lifestyle and eating proper nutrition consistently, it's okay. You don't have to kick yourself, that you had a fast food and feel really guilty about it.
Right. And it's a very good point. In all things, moderation. If you are mostly eating healthy and mostly eating clean and mostly exercising, the occasional weekend or vacation where you did not, you know what? Life would not be worth living if you did not have fun. So go have fun. You just can't do that bad stuff every single day and expect that you're not going to have consequences. That's unrealistic.
The proverbial cheat meal.
Absolutely.
Which in the fitness community is big. We work really hard to allow ourselves
so you can have
to
the cheat meal. Absolutely.
So now we're at the moment here at the end of our interview. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to leave you guys with something personal. So we asked Dr. Dimayuga, what is one piece of advice that he would give to somebody who wants to lose a little bit of weight? Here's what he said.
The one piece of advice, fairly easy to implement, would be to simply eat real food. And what I mean by this is don't eat food that comes from a box that you need to reconstitute, that you need to put water or add water to, or don't eat food that has been processed and cut up and chopped up, and don't eat stuff that's not a food product. There's a difference between real food. Real food are plants and vegetables, fruits and vegetables that came out of the ground, or an animal that used to be alive and walking around. That constitutes real food for us. Food products are things essentially stripped of all nutrient, and then the food companies enrich them with God knows what, a whole host of chemicals. And we have talked about our exposure to toxins, and by not eating real food, you're constantly ingesting more toxins. One very simple, straightforward, relatively inexpensive way to start you on the road to health. Just eat real food. Do yourself a big favor.
Thank you, Dr. Dimayuga.
My pleasure, Jimmy. Anytime.
Yes.
This is fun.
We appreciate you sitting down with Fit In Online today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you, Dr. Dimayuga. So now, let's talk about this. What did we learn? What did we learn from the sit-down interview? Well, we learned that there's three components to losing weight, and that is going to be proper nutrition, clean eating, and exercise. And in that nutrition, you also need to detoxify yourself. There's toxins all around us. We're always ingesting them. It's something you can't get away from. So it's not necessarily something that you can avoid. What you just need to do is be aware of it. Okay, we also learned don't diet. Very interesting. Very interesting thing to say coming from a doctor. But the truth behind it, as Dr. Dimayuga explained in the video, is that he doesn't want you to think of your diet as something you're going to start and stop. It's a lifestyle change. If you're looking to lose a little bit of weight and you need to lose a little bit of weight, most likely you need to tweak your diet. Don't go and look for a new diet that you're going to start and stop. Tweak, your current existing diet to be a little bit more clean. We also learned, for the parents out there, that you can teach proper nutrition to children, which can benefit them and last them a lifetime, and in fact get them ahead of the curve early on, because as we all know, there are so many sugary options available to children, and that's okay, of course, anything in moderation, but at some point you really want to have that lesson about proper nutrition, just as the same lesson you're going to have with them about how exercise is important.